going on YouTube? It's your boy Logisticalstyles coming at you with a different setup. This is going to be a tutorial. It's going to be a learning experience for both me and for you. And as you can see, we're just rocking with a mixer today, no decks, and that's what today's video is all about. So let's get into it right after the break. Okay, YouTube, here we are. This is the setup that we're working with today. This is the Rane 70 mixer. No 12s connected, no turntables connected, nothing but the mixer. And what we're going to do is we're going to hop in and do kind of a little deep dive into how to efficiently use this mixer without any other decks or anything connected. And the reason I'm doing this video is because I've been coming across a lot of different situations where a full setup just was not needed. But I could do the gig if I just had my mixer right here with me. So this mixer has a transport mode for the pads where you get, control over the play and pause from the mixer itself. It's already there. You don't have to map it. If you wanted to, you could map your own version of this with one of the extra user modes, but we're going to work with the transport mode, which is the button on the farthest right hand side of each set of buttons. And when you go into transport mode, you will see that you have all the pads are preset to something. So I'm going to start from this bottom right corner because this is pretty much the most important button that I think is needed for pad mode. And then I'll talk about a couple of things that I think they should have done with this as far as the layout and having control and being able to use this as a standalone mixer or as a mixer without the decks. I mean, you still have to use Serato, so it's not standalone. But this green button, this is your start stop button, play pause. It's the button that starts the music and stops the music. Start, stop, and it picks up when you stop it. It's pausing it, so when you pause it, it picks up right where it left off. It's not a cue button; it's a start stop button. Next button to it, the red one, is the cue button. This is the one where you can use, it's like a temporary cue. You see this on the CDJs and even some other controllers. It's not a button that I ever really used when I did use CDJs, or if it was on a controller that I had. I just didn't really use it. I was mainly concerned about having the start stop button. So you can hit the button and it'll set a cue point, and then while you're playing you can jump back to that cue point and pick up from there, which is cool. But I'm more concerned with, if I wanted to use any kind of cueing, I would have my hot cues where I can jump across to different parts of the song, trigger it, and let it actually play. So, but what you just saw me do is something that you're going to have to be comfortable with, and something that you're really going to be thinking about as you're operating with just this mixer. Is you're going to have to know little tricks like how I'm in cue mode, I'm able to start the beat, but then move over to transport mode, hit the play button, and I can release my finger and it still keeps playing. Now if I want to, I can jump back to cue mode and I can drum it out, or I can trigger cue points from there and then jump back into transport mode, to stop it. So that's something you're really going to have to be comfortable with or be thinking about as you're using this, is what mode are you in? Are you in hot cue mode? Are you in transport mode? And they do have different colors, but the colors overlap when you're looking at different things, especially with hot cues, because you can make any one of these any color you want. With the transport mode, these are the set colors, I believe. So you're stuck with green being the start, play, pause button. This is the temporary cue button. Then this button right here, the yellow button, this is what turns your sync on and off. This is what activates your sync. If you hit shift and hit that again, then that turns the sync off, and you can tell because it's not as bright yellow as it was when it's engaged. So shift off, remember that. So when you're using this mixer, you're going to be a button jockey. You're going to be a BJ. You're going to be just hitting buttons and almost programming your set as you're going, which is, if you're good at it and you have, that mind frame, you can do it. I know several DJs that are able to do this with other mixers that don't even have all this level of control. One of my DJ friends, DJ Spin out in Arizona, he's able to do this with the Numark scratch mixer. He can play with just the mixer itself, and it is possible. But if I had to do it, I'd be using a lot more of the keyboard shortcuts and using my trackpad. But I don't want to have to do that when I'm using this as a standalone. So those are the 3 buttons we've gone through so far: your play, pause, your cue, your sync engagement, and then this purple button right here. This is your pitch lock, your key lock. So you can engage it and disengage it just by hitting it. You don't need to hit a shift. You just hit that button itself, and it goes from light purple to dark purple, and that turns your key lock on. Usually I have it on most of the time, especially if I'm not going to have any decks. That means I'm not doing any scratching. It's going to be on. Only time I really turn it off is when I'm doing heavy scratching, because it kind of fights the movements that you're doing, so you don't get as much of a defined scratch if you have it key lock engaged. Turn that off and it'll sound like what you're trying to accomplish when you're scratching. That's just a tip for another time. But anyway, if we move up to the next level above, we have these purple, or not purple, we have these teal, light blue looking buttons, and what they are the nudge feature. So when you need to speed up a song that's playing, you can nudge it forward, and you see even without it playing, it's nudging up that pitch. Or you can slow it down, you see it's rewinding it a little bit. But when the song's actually playing, you hear it speeding up, and you can definitely hear it because I didn't have my key lock on. If I have my key lock on, and when you let go, it does go back to the speed that you had it set to. Now, these buttons here on the top right, the yellow ones, those are the ones that actually move the pitch slider. So when you're trying to go from a different BPM and keep it there, you would use these left and right to move your pitch control. So I'll play that. See, as I'm holding it, and that's interesting because while the song was playing and as I was doing it, it released once I let go. Now, if I have the song not playing and I move the pitch and I let go, oh, it goes back as well. Okay, so that's weird. I always thought that this was, okay, the nudge was just temporary. Then these two on the right, so I need to look into that a little bit more to see what that's about, because basically it felt like they were both doing the same thing. This is supposed to be your nudge, and then this is supposed to be your pitch control slider moving, but I'll look into that in a second, unless they mapped it to, no. No. So on some controllers, if you hit shift and move the library knob, that makes you change the pitch. But you could probably map it that way, but nope, that's not what it is. All right, so that's the transport. That's all of the transport button features. I'll come back to these top ones in a minute after I consult the manual, just so I can give you some accurate information. But one feature that is not on there, and I guess they just couldn't fit it in there because you only have 8 buttons, is the beat jump. And beat jump, I think, is really important. And if you look on your screen, this is your beat jump controls right here. Some controllers have a beat jump parameter button already built in onto the mixer and the controller. This one doesn't. You could probably map it up that way, but well, let me take that back. It does. You go into the roll and you use the pads, so you can get the beat jump from using the pads. But on other controls, what I'm talking about, there's an actual dedicated button for jumping back and forth, and this mixer doesn't. But using in the pad modes, if you go into roll, you go change your pad mode to the roll, hit that button, and then your beat jump is going to be right here, these red buttons, left and right. You can jump the amount of beats that you set using these middle buttons right here. You can make it up to a 32 beat jump. You can jump that far ahead that's a good way of maneuvering through a song. And then up top, you still have your rolls. That's your beat roll. So you'd have to jump into transport mode, hit the song, go into roll mode. You can change different parameters by going. See, I jumped all the way back before the song even started. And the reason I was able to do that is because I was in a 32 bar. I had 32 bars selected. If I go back, I'll bring it down, hit play. So that's how you jump around with the beat jump feature. And if you don't see the beat jump controls on your screen, you have to go into the settings within Serato, and there's a checkbox here that says show beat jump controls. Once you check that box, then you're able to see the controls on screen. Just as a test, if you didn't have them shown, let's see. Okay, so now we just learned something right there. So if you don't have that checkbox for the beat jump controls to be shown, it not only won't be shown on the screen within Serato, you also won't get them when you're in roll mode. So when you're in roll mode, then you get to see the beat jump controls. So it applies, that checkbox applies to what's on screen and what the hardware is able to do, showing. So that's a good thing to know. Now I wish that beat jump was in there with the transport mode. In fact, I'd be willing to give up that Q button, that temporary Q, and possibly the key lock button. I don't really need those. I don't need to have access to those. One, I don't use the temporary Q, and I don't need to have access to the master tempo or the key lock. I can, you know, handle that with mouse click, you know. So I would be willing to give those up in order to have beat jump features. But then you would also need at least 2 more. And you know what? I would give up. I would actually have gotten rid of this whole top row. I don't really need to. Maybe I'd keep the nudge, but that other one, this yellow pad, until I figure out exactly how it's supposed to be working, I would not need that. I would not need the temporary Q, and I would not need the key lock. So that's 4 pads that I would not use and be willing to sacrifice in order to get the beat jump controls on the same page as the transport mode. Then you can really have some good control and be able to jump around within the song. But that's just, you know, me. Maybe other people don't feel that way, but I think it makes sense to have had it work that way. Now, you know, once you master your transport control and you are used to doing that, then everything else pretty much is how you would have been using it, or maybe not. I'll get to that in a second. You know what I mean? But you have your instant doubles. That's how you would be using it if you had a deck or a pair of decks. So that's going to be very handy for using this solo, is the instant doubles button. I love that this has dedicated instant doubles buttons. In fact, that's one of my features that I like about this over the 72. Then the scroll and load knobs. With me not having decks, this is going to be really important for me to start using, because I don't use them as much on the mixer. I'd rather use them. It's actually in a better position on the Rane 12 or the Rane 12 MK2. I like having the knob there so I can scroll through the library. But now, if I'm going to be using this solo, I need to get comfortable with scrolling through here, scrolling through my library, loading, and the buttons are really very handy for this type of situation, because you got your back button where you can jump in and out from crates or playlist into the list itself, or go back into the list of playlist and crates. You've got your loading by pressing down on the knob. So all that is very handy. You just got to get used to moving up there to use those controls, and then everything else is really Everything else is pretty much what you already know about. You've got your audio controls with your high, mid, low, and your filters and your toggle, your effects. But the main thing is being able to jump in around these different pad modes. I use a lot of hot cues, so I got to remember to be aware of what's lit up on this top row. That's going to be very important to remember what mode you're in. I'm not a big user of the save loop mode yet. I have to probably save a lot more loops before I find it useful, but I'm going to be jumping into the roll mode a lot more often just so I can have, you know, my beat jump. And then sampler is always there, and then if you double tap on these transport mode buttons and the roll button, these yellow pads, all yellow, these are ones that you can define. So if you have some other features that you kind of need in order to be able to work with just this mixer, you have these buttons that are available for you to map to the feature within the software. And if you ever have any questions about what something on the software does within Serato, all you have to do is hit this help right here and turn on your tooltips, and anything you hover over, it will tell you exactly what it is you're looking at or what you're hovering over. So you can tell whether you're, you know, what some of these features are. Like, I didn't really know what this was. I knew that this was being controlled by the purple button in the transport mode, but it wasn't until I turned on the tooltips I saw that this was the key lock. So that's how you can figure out, you know, what these buttons do. If you have a button and you don't know what it does, just start tapping it. When you have your screen up and you can see what it does, you can see which one is being activated, and then put your tooltips pointer over it, and it'll tell you that, you know, like this is key lock, or, you know, this is sync, this is key sync. So there's a difference between key lock and key sync. That's interesting. That's probably a feature that is enabled. Let's see. No, I thought it would be something that was enabled here, but you just turn it on and off from here. So that's just another pro tip. You know, if you ever get lost within the software, you don't know what a feature is or what a button does, just turn on your tooltips and the program will tell you. So one of the main reasons why I started using or considering using this mixer alone is because I've been doing a lot of gigs where I just didn't have a lot of room for my whole setup. You know, even my regular lounge gig barely fits the 2 decks and the mixer. So I got rid of my other controllers. I used to have a Pioneer SB2. I had a SR2. I've had, you know, a couple of other controllers prior to that, and I just didn't like the tiny jog wheels. I felt like I wanted the full setup, but some of these places, they just don't have the room for the full setup. So I've been doing some events that have also just been so small it wasn't even worth it for me to pull out the big setup, because it was like a tiny pool party with 10 people there. So it didn't make sense for me to pull out, you know, $3,000 worth of equipment to entertain 10 people. And then in those situations, ended up using my Numark Touch, Numark DJ2Go2 Touch, and that's been working good. It's been, you know, handy to have, but it's also very small. It's very tiny. I don't have all the controls. You only have 4 hot cues, and jumping between the pad modes on this is like kind of a nightmare. I don't even mess with it. It was nice having the jogs available, but it just wasn't what I felt comfortable doing a whole gig with. But it also got me to thinking about something as I've been putting this video together. And I've done Instagram posts with this before where I had this hooked up with the Rane 12s right in the middle, and it worked as a mixer. So now here's an interesting thought, because this would be really awesome, and it would make things a lot, you know, more easy if I were able to plug this into the hub on the back of the 70. And will this give me it gives me control of the platters. Now that makes this so much more of a good possibility. So now I can have, I need to get a longer USB cable, but I can have my decks down here just so I can just have that full, let me bring this down, full tactile control. Gives me another dedicated play button. I can still use my dedicated play button in the transport mode, and I have control over my pitch from here. So that is really interesting. This makes for a very dope combo. So I could do a gig and work with just this. I can do actually with just either of these pieces alone, but one of the things I was really concerned about is not being able to really move through a song, you know, because I download a lot of songs as I'm DJing. You know, I may get a request, and sometimes well, when I download them, they don't have the cue point, so I may need to download a song, set a cue point, and it's easy to do it now because even though you only have 4 cue points here, these are dedicated cue points. These pads are dedicated cue pads, so they're always going to be there. And I don't have to switch between modes. I can stay in transport mode. I can stay over here in hot loop mode or hot cue mode and use the play pause button here. But this just has the benefit of using the mixer is this is going to be the sound card. This is where the quality sound is coming from. This just uses the headphone jack that comes out, and it's okay. It gets the job done, but having this right here will give you that Rane 70 sound card to use. I think an important thing to do or to note is that since these are both sound cards on their own, you have to plug this one up and connect it first and then connect this. So when you connect this first, this becomes the sound card that Serato uses, and then when you connect this secondly, this will just be a MIDI controller that Serato is using. So if I get me a longer USB cable where I can just have this at the bottom, this would be a really handy setup for those small gigs where it's like I don't need to bring another 60 pounds worth of, or not 60, but 50 pounds worth of equipment, being the cases in the Rane 12s. Well, probably with the cases, it is another 60 pounds of equipment. So I can do a gig, not have to have all that, because sometimes they just want me to mix. They don't want to see me scratch or do anything. I'm just in the corner and I'm playing background music for a pop-up shop, or I'm playing background music at something very quick. I'm getting a lot of campaign gigs where they want me to come out and DJ and just do a 2-hour music set while they're going out and doing some door knocking or whatever. So this allows me to be a lot more mobile, and it is something to consider. I love my 12s and I will always bring them out whenever possible, but it's nice to have a backup. And using it with this combination right here, this does give me redundant control. I have multiple cue points, I have multiple start stop buttons, multiple ways to adjust my pitch, and I have jog wheel function. But even without this, I can disconnect it and I can still do a whole party with just this mixer by itself. So I think that's about it. That's going to conclude this video. This is just me finding information out about this mixer along with you as you join me on this journey. So just if you like what you're seeing, if you learned something, got some value from this video, be sure to make sure you subscribe, like, comment, and share, and be on the lookout for more videos because we got some more coming soon. So anyway, this is your boy Logistical Styles, and I am signing out. Peace.